So today we find our way we're going to be in chapter 8 and into a little bit of chapter 9 as Mark read this morning, and we've kind of, as we continue through this series, and we're going to wrap this up over the next couple of weeks, so this week and then 2 more, and then we'll be done, and it's going to be student takeover, and before you know it, it's going to be the end of June, and summer will be here. So who's excited? Anybody? Passionate about that. Okay, 4 people this week. Okay, so that's great. But we're going to spend some time here in chapter 8 into chapter 9, and Mark kind of gave us the upside and the kind of the upswing at the end of this as we kind of dive into these words of the teacher. But there's a lot to cover before we get there. And so as we said from the outset, this whole series and this whole book is based out of one man's quest for meaning, purpose, and significance in life under the sun. And what we mean by that, and what he means by that, is as he seeks to discern and experience everything there is to discern and experience in this life, what gives my life meaning, purpose, and significance, he limits his quest to what can happen in life here on this earth. He does not kind of get tied up in questions of eternality, of the divine, of God, of any of those things. It's in my view of what can be seen and measured and understood and participated in and experienced. What is it that brings meaning, purpose, and significance? And throughout, what we've seen is these brief conclusions as he comes to the end of his search for things like wisdom, his search in places of pleasure, his search for wealth, and his search, in all of these life experiences and possibilities and projects and work and all the rest. He gives us these brief conclusions along the way, and today we find one of them once again, and it's a similar conclusion that we've heard before, and the similar conclusion is simply this: enjoy your life. That is the recommendation that I can give to anyone in life under the sun, is to enjoy your life. Now, I think if we were to do a straw poll this morning, and I were to ask, how many of you would want that to be true, that I would just enjoy my life? Would we be all in agreement there? You'd love to enjoy your life. Yeah, absolutely. Right? I want to enjoy my life, and I'm sure you do too. There's loads of things that I would love to enjoy. Maybe you've got hopes, maybe you've got dreams, maybe you've got all kinds of desires, things you'd like to see happen, places you'd like to go, things you'd like to do, places you'd like to visit, people you want to share life with, all of those things. Now, I get that for some of us this morning, as we kind of hear that, we all want to enjoy life and hopes and dreams and desires. And for some of us, maybe it feels like at this point, for whatever reason, that we don't have those. It's more like we had those. And maybe because they didn't come true or couldn't come true or didn't happen in the moment, we maybe gave up on them for one reason or another. But that does not mean that we cannot enjoy life. And while the details of what we might describe as enjoyment of life might be, they might vary between us. Like your version of enjoying life might be a little different than my version, than the person next to you. But the idea is very much the same. At the heart and at the core, I think for all of us, there's this desire to enjoy life. But then comes along this thing, especially if you're moving out of your youth into adulthood. There's a word that's been coined over the last few years about millennials, and that millennials are finding their way into adulthood and realize that they have to start adulting. It's actually a word, adulting, okay? And adulting is really about taking care of all the things that you have to take care of as an adult, of being responsible for your life, not just flat out enjoyment, but there's responsibility that comes, and the responsibility is often found not just in the giant decisions, but in the everyday mundane things of life, all the necessary tasks, right? In fact, just yesterday, I was sitting in a chair in our living room, and I was looking at my phone, and I can't remember how the conversation came up, but Emma looked at me, and she's 7, she said, "Dad, what are you doing on your phone?" And I said, "I'm looking at my to-do list." And she said, "You have a to-do list?" Like, this is a big revelation. I know for all of you, this is not a surprise, but for Emma, it was like a what? And then she said, "What is on your to-do list?" I said, "Well, Emma, all kinds of wonderful things. Mow the lawn is one of them. That has to be done. No mow May it's not going to work this year. So I had to mow the lawn. We had to fix the fence on the garden. We have to get the camper up and clean it out if y'all want to sleep in it tomorrow night. we've got to, there's a bunch of other stuff on the list of just kind of around the house projects that happened in the spring, right? And she's looking at me with these big, huge eyes, and I don't know what her plans for the day were, but I said, how many of those things do you want to help me with? She goes, none, right? Like, not a chance. Like, I'm going to sit here and watch my show. That's what I'm going to do. You can do all the work you want to do. But there's this to-do list. There's this thing of every day in the mundane of life. You got to pay bills. You got to unclog the toilet. You got to, when the sink won't drain, you got to take care of the plumbing. Somebody's got to buy the groceries, right? You've got to stand in line. You've got to be on hold because the mega corporation that you get your service through is experiencing higher than normal call volumes and has been for 10 years, right? Like, so like you have to do those kinds of things, and you're on hold and you're with people and you're trying to figure out relationships, and when things go sideways or when things are good, like there's just all this stuff of life. And so I think for some of us, and I know this is true for me from time to time, so I just assume it's true for you, that there's this tension that can exist in our lives between all the things that we enjoy and all the things we just have to do. Anybody ever notice that? I mean, some of the things you have to do, you enjoy doing, and I'm not, down on that. But like for some of us, we just feel this like, I would much rather have spent my weekend doing X, Y, Z than mowing the lawn and fixing the plumbing and being on hold and all the rest. Anybody with me on that? Are we on the same page here today? Yeah? Okay. So there's this tension that exists. And here's the thing. I think wisdom helps us to discern the right time and the right way to enjoy good things in this life. And that's, I think, what the teacher wants to help us to see as we work our way through chapter 8 and into chapter 9. He begins this way in chapter 8, verse 1. Who is like the wise, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. And so it's just a way of saying, listen, the wise, those who are able to see clearly, to have discernment, who can offer good counsel, the one who fears the Lord, who desires to do what is right, to take knowledge and apply it to a situation. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so the one who is wise, right, who can compare to a wise person? And the person who is wise and who possesses wisdom, it changes their disposition. It changes their face. They don't look so hard, but they look different. It shines is the way that it's described. And so Solomon is saying here, the teacher is saying that the wisdom of a person or their folly, either one, will actually become evident and will change their way of living. It changes themselves, the wisdom and folly that we may or may not possess. And so there is this blessedness, there is this happiness to walking in wisdom that is important. Now, if you go back to Psalm chapter 1, what we see in the book of Psalms is, the book of Psalms is arranged specifically for particular reasons, but the very first psalm is what we call a wisdom psalm. And as we start to read through the book of Psalms, we see in the very first psalm, it's a way of wisdom and the way of wickedness that get contrasted. And the writer of this psalm says, blessed is the man or the person, happy or fortunate is the person who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. And so the person whose life is blessed or who considers themselves fortunate, or the person who is wise, there's things that they do not participate in. And it's this walking, standing, and sitting. And really that becomes this kind of picture of walking is the equivalent of thinking, right? Walking with or going along in the same train of thought, right? Who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, which really isn't wise. Okay, so the person who's blessed, or the person who experiences that blessedness, is the one who doesn't walk or think along with the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners. And that standing has to do more with behaving now, not just thinking, but behaving. the way that we linger around. And not only that, standing in the way of sinners or sitting in the seat of scoffers. The idea of sitting here, right, has to do with dealing with. So not just a way of thinking or a way of behaving, but a way of interacting. And the person who finds their life blessed of God, blessed is the one who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of scoffers, but his delight, the thing that he enjoys, the thing that he takes pleasure in is what? His delight is in the law of the Lord. His delight is in the law of the Lord. And on this law, he meditates day and night. The thing that makes him happy, the thing that brings him joy, the thing that kind of stirs his heart is the law of the Lord, the instruction or the wisdom of God. That brings for the blessed person delight. The psalm goes on to say he's like a tree planted by streams of water who yields its fruit in season. Its leaf does not wither. All he does prospers, but the wicked are not so. They're like the chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the seat of judgment, or sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. And so there's a definite kind of outflow of the life of the wise person or the blessed person or the one who delights in the law of the Lord. Now, if you flip to Proverbs, because again, this is all in the context of the wise person whose face shines, right? The hardness of your countenance is changed. In Proverbs chapter 1, verse 1, we read the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and in equity, to give prudence, says, to the simple. Okay, so not just to have understanding of the affairs and the stuff of life, but to give prudence to the simple. Now, the simple here is simply meant to be to the naive or to the gullible person. Right? So to give prudence to someone who's naive or gullible, that's what wisdom is able to do. Knowledge and discretion or discernment to the youth, to the young person who's trying to figure it all out. Wisdom can help with that. Let the wise hear and increase their learning, which, by the way, is a way of saying you never really kind of arrive. There's always more to be gained. There's further insight to be had. There's more wisdom to be added. And the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand the proverb, a saying, the words of the wise, the riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and fools despise wisdom and instruction. There we have it again. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so through the first 9 chapters of Proverbs, the teacher simply gives this strong admonition through teaching, through illustration, through storytelling. Just seek wisdom. Know the fear of God. Delight in his ways. That's the encouragement that comes. In fact, in chapter 3, we read these words, my son, don't forget my teaching. Don't set wisdom aside, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Wear them like a necklace is the idea. Write them on the tablet of your heart so you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and of human beings. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. You know these verses. And lean not on your own understanding, right? In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Don't be wise in your own eyes, but fear the Lord and turn away from evil. And it will be healing to your flesh and refreshment for your bones. Trust in the Lord. And so even more than all of the wisdom you can gain, recognize that your trust is not ultimately even in wisdom itself. Because what is his point? There's an advantage to gaining wisdom. We've heard this all through Ecclesiastes. There is an advantage to gaining wisdom, but trusting God is the highest wisdom. There's an advantage in life to gaining wisdom, but trusting God is the highest wisdom. And this is important for what we encounter next in what the teacher has to say in Ecclesiastes as he deals with issues of authority and kings and justice and equity and enjoyment of life. He says in chapter 8, again, verse 2, he says, I say, this is Ecclesiastes again, we're back there. Ecclesiastes 8:2, I say, keep the king's command. because of God's oath to him. It could also be translated because of your oath to God. So keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Do not be hasty to go from his presence, that is of the king. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he, the king, does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, what are you doing? So his attention now, as he talks about authority and kings and rulership and governance and all those kinds of things, he says, listen, because of your oath to God, then we honor or to keep the king's command. We must recognize the authority that God has instituted. And he says, do not take your stand in an evil cause, because the king does whatever he pleases. And so the idea of the evil cause here has to do with rebellion, an adverse attitude, a plot on his life or of his office. Now look, I'm aware this gets really complicated, and there's all kinds of ways that we want to figure this out, and it requires discernment, and this has just been a constant theme, right? But here he is saying, listen, you have to be careful in the way that you deal with issues of authority and kings and all of the rest. And he goes on to say then this in verse 5, whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for everything, although man's trouble lies heavy on him. There is a right moment to do the right thing, and there is a right thing to do in the right moment, right? And this has been a theme all throughout. Even last week, we talked about the patience and the perseverance as it's connected to all these things. This is not new for us as we've made our way through. There's a right time and a right moment to do the right thing, but the thing is that things of life lay heavy on our hearts. Life is hard sometimes. There's things that happen that are outside of our control that we have no say in, that we're not able to do something about, but we wait on the Lord, right? There can be all kinds of wisdom, and there's an advantage to that, but trusting God is the highest wisdom. And so even in terms of kings and their authority and the right time and the right moment, like what kind of example can we pull out of the scriptures that kind of helps us to understand what's going on here and waiting for the right time and the right moment, and not to take our stand in an evil cause that is adversarial because the king is supreme? So where do we see this playing out? Well, think of the life of David. Saul has been anointed king over Israel. Right? You know this story, don't you? Saul's anointed king over Israel. And during his rulership and his kingship, Saul takes a bad turn. And eventually the Lord says to Samuel, I've now rejected Saul as king over Israel. I want you to go and I want you to anoint a new king who's going to be David. But God does not deal with Saul right away. Saul's still king. In fact, after David is anointed king, he's brought into Saul's court because Saul is given an evil spirit from the Lord to torment him. Whenever David played his harp and played music, Saul his spirit got a little bit better. There's a little bit more joy there. And yet, from time to time, Saul would get on an angry tear and rampage and throw a spear at David, trying to kill him. Pins it to the wall right by his head. Like, what's up with that? And so David eventually flees for his life, and he's on the run for a long, long time. And Saul, from time to time, would hear David is over in this area, and he would try to chase him down. Now, listen, Saul was motivated in large part by jealousy and of public opinion at that point. Because what was the song that was always sung about Saul and David? Saul's killed his thousands, but David's killed his tens of thousands. David, the mighty warrior. David, who's accomplished more than Saul. David, whose name and reputation is high and above and far exceeds King Saul. Our lots with him. What an amazing man David is. And so one day Saul is hunting David, and David's holed up in the back of a cave. And Saul, in his search with all his armed militia, are out in the wilderness, in the desert, and Saul needs to relieve himself. And the cave is the place to do it. So he goes into the cave just far enough in that nobody can see what's going on, and he starts to do his business there in the cave. I mean, this is kind of crass. I mean, probably not the picture you wanted for Sunday morning. I know, right? Lunch is coming. Can we just move on, not talk about this part? Okay, so let's hear this. Okay, so here's Saul doing his business. David sees his kind of mighty warriors with him, his armed militia, and they're like, and they're their words to David are, look, the Lord has delivered him to your hand. We're interpreting this moment, David, as your moment to seize the crown and the throne, and all you got to do is sneak up behind Saul, and it'll be game over. And so David creeps up. But then he realizes in the moment, it's not for me to touch the Lord's anointed. And so he cuts off a piece of the cloth of Saul's robe as it's kind of trailed off behind him. And then Saul finishes, and he goes out of the cave, and he gets down. And then as soon as Saul gets back up on his horse, David comes out of the cave at the mouth of the cave at a safe enough distance, and he yells to Saul, and he says, Saul, look what I have. It's a piece of your garment. And Saul looks down and realizes it's been cut off. It, in fact, is. And in that moment, there had to be sheer dread and sheer terror that his life hung in the balance of that moment. And yet, David said, I will not come in the way. I will not play the act of God in this moment. Now, this isn't the only time that this happens, right? There's a lesser-known story where Saul is asleep in his tent with all of his armed bodyguards sleeping all around him on the ground. And Saul's spear is stuck in the ground by his head, right? And his water jug is there. And David at night does a risky thing. He takes one other person with him, and they sneak into Saul's camp. This is while, again, Saul is kind of on his way to destroy David. And so here's David sneaks in the middle of the night. And again, the guy with him says, the Lord's given Saul to you. This is the moment. Like, just give me the word and I'll take the spear and do him in. And David's like, nope, that's not the decision for me to make. That's the Lord's decision. I'm going to honor the Lord's decision. And so they take Saul's spear and his water jug, and they go back out, and then at kind of daybreak, they blow a horn, and Saul and all his bodyguards wake up, and David starts shouting, hey, great job your bodyguards are doing, and look what I got, right? And again, Saul's heart melts, and he's like, I realize. So what's David do? He's patient. There's a proper time, and there's a right way, and he trusts the Lord in the process. Now, the teacher goes on to say in verses 10 through 13 of chapter 8, he says, then I saw the wicked buried. So he's shifting gears to a different view of things. He says, I saw the wicked buried, and they used to go in and out of the holy place where they were praised in the city where they had done such things, that is, wicked things. So in the very city that they do wicked and evil things, he says, I've seen, right, where the wicked are buried, and those wicked people used to go in and out of the city when they were doing their wickedness and being praised in the process. He says, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, the wheels of justice turn slow, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. There seems to be greater opportunity because it's going to take time and process to deal with stuff. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God because they fear before him, but it will not be well with the wicked, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow because he does not fear the Lord. Again, there's this contrast between the public life and the personal lives and the being in and out of the temple and the way that they actually conduct their affairs, and it seems that the justice system moves slow, and it seems that things get overlooked, and it seems like every deed that people do does not get answered for right away, and sometimes it seems like it just never gets answered for. But he says there is a vanity that takes place on earth, and there are the righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked, and there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. And I said this also is vanity. In other words, it doesn't make sense. The right thing sometimes gets punished, and the wrong thing sometimes gets rewarded, and injustice and inequity exist in this world because people are sinful and stuff is just messed up. It's essentially what he's saying. Like, it's all sideways. It's never truly right or truly figured out, right? And again, what becomes the admonition? We continue to trust God in the midst of all of the mess. He says, when I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that's done on the earth, how neither day or night do one's eyes see sleep? And then I saw the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find out. Even though a wise man claims to know it, he cannot find it out. Again, same conclusion or similar to last week is simply this, that all the wisdom in the world won't give all the answers to all the things we want to know and to figure and to understand and to discern, because it is not for us to know. And so what do we do? How do we deal with all of it? Well, if I could summarize it in a simple phrase, I'd put it this way. We walk by faith, not by insight. Oh, insight's important. Yeah. Insight is helpful. Yes. But we must walk by faith, right? Wisdom has advantage for this life, but at the end of the day, fearing God is the highest. Trusting God is the highest form of wisdom. There's an advantage to being wise, to doing justice, to love mercy, to walking humbly with the Lord. There's a responsibility even that we have to do those things. And yet we must have faith and to trust God that justice will ultimately prevail in his time and in his way. And when we can come to that place of trust, I think we find a great freedom for ourselves. So the conclusion of the matter, at least here in chapter 9, becomes this. But all this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and the deeds are in the hands of God. Whether it is love or hate, man does not know, but both are before him. It is the same for all, since the same event happens to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and to him who does not sacrifice. As to the good, or as the good is, so is the sinner. And he who swears is he who shuns an oath. This is an evil in all that is done under the sun, that the same event happens to all. Also, the hearts of children of men are full of evil, and madness in their hearts will they live. And after that, and what's the same event that happens to us all? They go to the dead. Death happens. As we've said, again, all along, death is the great equalizer. And it's in the hand of God where everyone's life is ultimately held. Because at the end of the day, we all die. That's the same event that's consistent for the righteous and for the wicked. We all, our lives under the sun, come to an end. But all is not lost. He says, but he who is joined with all the living has hope. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. And they have no reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Their love and their hate, their envy, they have already punished forever. They have no more share in all that is done under the sun. All hope is not lost while you are still alive. Knowing that we will die, as we said last week, gives perspective for what is to be held in this life. Because life under the sun, eventually all of us will be dead and gone and a non-contributor to the function of these moments. So what do we do? And here's Solomon's semi-conclusion, not to the whole thing, but to all of these things. He says, go, eat your bread with joy. Drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. In other words, enjoy your life. And that's one thing that is up to you to actually do. He says, for God has already approved what you do. Now, again, this is not permission for self-indulgence, for immorality. I mean, we've discussed these things previously, okay? So don't send me any emails this week saying, the pastor's just saying, do whatever you want, and God approves of it all. That's not how this works, okay? We've discussed this. You got to put it in that context. But God has already approved what you do. So what is it that the teacher is saying? Look, God takes pleasure in the things that we take pleasure in. To enjoy life is actually a gift from God. He says, let your garments always be white. Let not oil be lacking on your head. These are allusions to celebration, like a wedding. Everyone wore kind of, the idea of white garments and oil and just kind of, that's this space of celebration, of joy, and of merriment, right? Like let your life, there's times of celebration, and allow those things to happen. He also says, enjoy life with the wife whom you love. because that too is a gift of God. All the days of your vain life. Now, this isn't sarcasm, okay? He's not saying, hey, listen, just enjoy your marriage, and all the days of your vain life. Now, we could pause and spend a good chunk of time about marriage and relationships, which we won't do for today, right? And I know, this lands in a bunch of places for us. I mean, some of you're here with your spouse and your arms are around each other. Some of you're kind of sitting beside each other. Some of you, there's a good space between for whatever reason, whatever happened this morning. I don't know. Okay. Now, again, this at the same time is not a knock on people who don't have a spouse. Just saying, if you have a spouse, if you have a wife, if you have a husband, what? Enjoy life with your spouse. All the days of your vain, short, brief, fleeting, mist, fog, vapor of a life that's here and then gone. Enjoy that in life under the sun, because that is your portion in life and in your toil in which you toil under the sun. He's just saying life is short. And in your marriage, enjoy that. In your food, enjoy that. Right? In the company you keep, enjoy that. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol, which is the place of the dead, to which you are going. Take advantage of the opportunities that you have and throw yourself wholeheartedly into them. Not just the half effort, not just the, well, if we can, we will, and we'll, right? Let's get at it. Let's go after it. Whatever your hand finds to do, enjoy your life, because when you're dead and gone, you can't do that anymore. It's not possible. It doesn't work that way. So Solomon's, encouragement to us in this, and again, in context, we got to recognize it. Enjoy your life and live while you are alive. Now, you have to still pay attention when there's attention. Right? If there's attention to be paid attention to, then pay attention to that. If there's an issue, it's like, oh man, I really want to enjoy this, but it's like, I don't know if it's good or moral, then pay attention to that tension. Okay? Is this the best thing? I don't know. Pay attention to that tension, but enjoy your life and live while you're alive. Why? Because God delights in these kinds of things. Do some things that are fun. Do some things that just give you a good belly laugh. Because listen, we all know, when life is stressful, and there's so much to have that's happening, right? And when we get so serious about stuff, that levity gets shoved to the side. And that can do great damage, not just to our heads, but our hearts, our souls. And that doesn't mean to say, don't take serious the things that need to be taken serious. Don't unclog the toilet when it needs to be unclogged and just go, oh, isn't that funny? We'll see what happens to the next person along the way. I don't know. Don't do that. You have to take care of the stuff of life. But listen, make sure there's some levity to it. Enjoy your life, because God delights in the things that we delight in. I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way before, so let me just give you a few quick suggestions. And again, this is more of just a random list I came up with, and it's not because I've got all these right. Okay, there's things in this list I need to pay attention to. There's probably 100 things that you could add to this list of things that maybe you need to add to the list of enjoy your life and live while you're alive. Again, in its right context, hear me. But listen, here's a couple things, about 7 or 8 actually. First is be present in the moment. Pay attention in the space that you are in, to the people that you are with, and the places you are at. Because listen, we can run from one thing to the next thing to the next thing and miss a whole bunch of things along the way. And sure, there's times where hurry is appropriate, but listen, we got to be present in the moment. And I don't know about you, but it's so easy for me to be trying to do one thing in the moment and to be thinking about the 10 other things that are on my to-do list or that need to happen before a certain time or date or whatever. And be playing with my kids and thinking about the other thing that needs to be done. Should be mowing the lawn, whatever. Anybody on the same page there? Be present in the moment. When you're there, engage. right? Pay attention to the people and the places. Another thing that we can do that can help with that is just simply sometimes turn your phone off. I know I've said this before, and look, I'm not against technology or phones or whatever, but you got to turn your phone off sometimes, because here's the truth. People can wait sometimes. Most major crises and emergencies aren't actually crises and emergencies, right? Sometimes there will be things that it's just that people want you to accomplish their priorities and not the priorities that you've been given, that you have to be a priority for you, right? So sometimes you just got to let the phone call wait. Call them back in an hour. Figure out, but pay attention in the moment, but sometimes just turn your phone off. And for some of us, and again, I'm not knocking social media, but some of us, we just need to delete the app from our phone or stop logging in every 10 minutes. Anybody get the scroll? Anybody know what I'm talking about? You got you're on Facebook or Instagram, and it's like there used to be this commercial online, and I didn't even remember what the commercial was for, which probably doesn't help because it doesn't. I don't remember I just remember the commercial, and the person, like, they're scrolling through Facebook, and then all of a sudden it stops, and there's this thing at the bottom that says, "You've reached the end of the internet." That doesn't exist on social media, by the way. It's a black hole of scroll. Okay, so like you can sit for hours looking at all the pictures people posted and all the experiences people have done, and an hour later you're looking at your phone going, well, I've caught up on a bajillion things I wanted to know and 100 bajillion things I didn't want to know, and my life is none the richer for it, really. I've just been stuck in this black hole scroll that's gone on for and the things that we get worked up about, and the things that, anybody here read comments of people's conversations back and forth online just for fun? Like, you're not going to contribute, but you're just seeing everybody's opinion and conversation and how it's all folding out, and sometimes you shake your head, and sometimes you laugh, and sometimes you're like, I can't believe I'm reading this. And so, is that true of anybody here? And it's like, what am I doing to my head and my heart in the process of this? And it's like, sometimes you just need to get rid of it. I mean, a few months ago, remember when Facebook blacked out for like 3 days? Because somebody deleted all the DNS server information, right? Didn't know, people typed in Facebook and the computer didn't know where to find it, right? And it's like, Facebook is down, the whole world's gone crazy, everything's crashing. It's like, for some people, it's like, wasn't that a nice couple days that they posted on Facebook after it all came back up, right? But isn't this true? And for some of us, we've just got to shut it down or turn it off and pay attention to some different things. When you go out to dinner or when you have people over, linger. Enjoy the meal. Enjoy the conversation. Enjoy the company. Don't we got to rush because we don't want to overstay, and we don't, sometimes you do need to leave because you are overstaying, but listen, you got to, wisdom will help you discern that, but find that space of just lingering over a meal, of enjoying each other's company, slowing down. And man, love your spouse. It's the husband or the wife that you have. Love them. Enjoy their company, their friendship. Hold their hand. Put your arm around them. You can do that in church too if you really want to. Enjoy. If you don't have a spouse for one reason or another, be a good friend. Call people up. How's it going? Let's go to the show. Let's do something together. Just be intentional about those relationships. Get your rest, your sleep. Take a Sabbath. Take a trip. Go on an adventure. Spend $100 in gas and drive to Tim Hortons in town to get a coffee. I don't. Okay, do you understand where I'm going with all this? How many? Do I need to give more examples? Are we good? It's yeah, it's lunchtime. We're good. Let's go. Okay, so but here's the thing, and again, hear me right. In its proper context, enjoy your life and live while you're alive, and take joy in those things because God takes pleasure in those things too. It's blessed by Him. It's a good gift from Him to be able to do that. And so make the moments count, and don't let all of the things ruin the good gifts that God has given you. And man, sometimes you got to dig a little deeper to find those good things, right? Sometimes we find ourselves in that space of life. It's like, there is nothing good right now. It's so hard to find. I don't know what it is. But man, you got to keep digging. And you find the good things, and you take hold of them, because those are good gifts from God that you don't want to squander. Let's give thanks. Father, we thank you for your goodness to us. And God, we thank you that amidst all the seriousness of life and all the difficult and painful things we walk through, and all the trouble that we face and the injustices that we see and the things that we disagree with or the things that we would have done differently, for even the places in our own lives where we've messed it up or got it wrong or made a poor choice or a bad decision or failed a friend or our spouse or even you in our own sin and evil and wickedness. God, you persist and you persevere with human beings. We've seen that all through Scripture. We've seen it true in our lives. And so, God, today, whatever we're walking into this season with on this long weekend, man, I know for many of us, we're carrying some heavy things, some hard things. And God, we trust you with those things. We believe you in the midst of those things, that you will see us through or that you will remove it, whatever is in your good timing and in your right and just way. And God, too, we believe and we know that even in the good things, that those are good gifts from you. And so, God, in those moments, help us to take joy and pleasure in them and to celebrate the good gifts you've given us and to be grateful and thankful not only to you, but to the others around us. And God, I pray that as we head into this week and into the summer season, God, there seems like in some ways there's a bit of relief that we all feel with this season. And I just pray that whatever it holds for us, that in the midst of it, that we would enjoy the life you've given us, that we would live it with all the responsibilities and all the pressures and all the fears and frustrations and concerns, that we might find joy in the things you've given us to enjoy. And may we be grateful to you for them and for the life that we have under the sun. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.